This is the Church of St. Paul in the Desert.
In the name of God, Amen. That gospel is a little rough, kind of tough. It's very rare that we have a gospel where Jesus tells us to hate anyone. I have a sense that he's trying to get our attention. If you will, sometimes it's the proverbial 2x4 up against the side of the head, getting our attention. Because what all three of these lessons speak about today is being a disciple of Jesus Christ, what that means and what that costs. Back in the 30s, there was a song that Frank Sinatra recorded. He actually recorded it in 1939, but it didn't become popular until 43. And no, I wasn't born then. Close, but not quite. And the line from that hymn was, "All or nothing at all." It's a great love song. And there's some of that implicit in these lessons today. I think Philemon speaks beautifully of that, and well read. But it really is about what it costs to be a follower of Jesus Christ. And so often we somehow lose sight of that. But it really is also about the choices we make on a daily basis, how we spend our time, how we understand the relationship initiated by Jesus Christ, by God in sending Jesus to us. There's a story about Will Willimon, who I believe is now retired, but he may still be a bishop in the United Methodist Church. And at one time, he was dean of the chapel at Duke. Now, the chapel at Duke University, if you've never seen it, looks a little bit like a Gothic cathedral. It reminds you that John and Charles Wesley were good Anglicans even at the time of their death. It's huge, immense. But here's the story. Will Willimon tells the story of getting a phone call from an irate father who begins the conversation with, "It's all your fault. You've instilled my daughter with all this religious stuff." And Willimon says, whoa. What seems to be the problem? And the father goes on as irate as ever. "My daughter has just graduated from your fine institution, Duke University, with a bachelor's degree, and she's going off to be a Presbyterian in Haiti and work for the church there. You filled her with all this religious rubbish." He doesn't go quite that far. And again, Will Willimon says, wait a minute. Didn't you get your daughter baptized?" "Well, yes, I did." "And didn't you send her to Sunday school every Sunday?" "Well, yes, I did, but that's not the point. And you let her go on those ski trips with the youth group to Colorado?" "Well, yes. But all I wanted was a Presbyterian." And Will Willimon, who liked to go for the jugular, "Too bad. You made yourself a disciple." And it's that simple. I tell this story about my own upbringing. My mother grew up as a Methodist, and my father was baptized as an Episcopalian. And my parents had made sure that we were all baptized. But my three brothers were not baptized until after this story. We had just returned from England, where he had been stationed with the Navy, and I remember the conversation explicitly. He called the rector of St. James in Leesburg, Virginia, and he said, "I have 5 heathens. I'm bringing them to you tomorrow. Do something with them." Ta-da! Something worked. something jived there. The reality is that within maybe 6 weeks, my father was superintendent of Sunday school, and my mother was on the vestry. Just saying, those things do happen. But something clicked. Something was recognized as the cost and the importance of being a disciple of Jesus Christ. Most of you have heard of the book by Dietrich Bonhoeffer, The Cost of Discipleship. And he learned full well that what he wrote was how he lived his life, and in fact was executed by the Nazis just before the end of the war. But he was willing to count the cost. He also was very clear that cheap grace was not anything he wanted any part of. And it costs something. It costs something. This morning's gospel speaks about that cost. And it's trying to get our attention that it's not about cheap grace. And very often we've misused that term of taking up your cross, referring to some major spiritual travail, or at least significant suffering or sacrifice, preferably on behalf of the faith. But what if it's simpler than that? What if it's more ordinary? Alan Culpepper says this: the language of cross-bearing has been corrupted by overuse. Bearing a cross has nothing to do with chronic illness, painful physical conditions, or trying family relationships. It is instead what we do voluntarily as a consequence of our commitment to Jesus Christ. It's that simple. Jesus understands that there are consequences associated with following Jesus, with conducting one's life in the way that Jesus does. Ironically, Simon of Cyrene was forced to bear the weight of Jesus' cross on his back while following behind Jesus as he made the torturous journey to the place of the skull where Jesus was crucified. Jesus goes on to remind us intrinsically to champion the cause of the poor and the diseased, 2 words there, to view one's calling as more expansive than the confines of the temple or the church, to sometimes buck tradition and those who view those traditions as infallible, to live a life of relative poverty, unwilling to take bribes and to amass wealth on the backs of the oppressed and unaware. To struggle for the alleviation of poverty and a living wage for all at the expense of one's own privilege. We hear much of white privilege these days. To expand one's concept of family to include neighbors far and near, all we encounter. The gospel this morning is clear, tough, but clear. What is the cost of following Jesus, of being a disciple? The cost of discipleship, it really is all or nothing. There is little in between in the process. And it's not necessarily about Sunday morning. It's about what we do when we leave this building and how we interact with all those we encounter. It is about relationship, the sacredness of relationships. It is about recognizing Christ in all whom we encounter. It is recognizing Christ in all whom we encounter. The good news for us this morning is that we are given another chance every morning of our lives, every time we encounter another human being. It is understanding the Christ in the other. Amen.